This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, I see.
All right, we'll call the order of the Monterey Select Board on January 23rd at 6 p.m. The first item of business is the budget.
For the last item,
So we went through a preliminary list of questions last week, so we can dive into those. We can either go just in order of the numbers of the budget, or we can go to what people find. If there's something that someone finds really important, we can jump to that first.
Well, why don't we, I might suggest we start up top and just work our way down.
Okay.
You know,
So the first thing that I have highlighted from last week was select board secretary, which Melissa sent an email explaining,
the 4.04%.
yeah, the 4.4% rather than the 4%.
I got a question. We have the town administrator position just going up 4%. Do we want to go after talking with and Mary work on that?
I read most of the comments, and I try to reply to as many of them as I can. Certainly a dozen or so a day.
Caller 01.
Thank you. No. Can we sound?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, caller Owen.
I think that number, so it's January and we won't be signing the warrant till April. I think that number is potentially subject to change, but I wouldn't say at this point that we know what it will be.
Okay. I mean, I can look at that. I'm just didn't
Yeah.
tell you guys, we hadn't talked about it. We talked about
Agreed.
what we would advertise for, but we didn't talk.
I mean, I'm still concerned that the number that we're advertising may not be high enough.
I share that concern, but we'll see where it goes.
I mean, I just hate to have to go through the whole thing twice. On this.
Okay, we're gonna have
Just to come to the meeting, the Federal Reserve has data, all households, the median household.
We're muted caller 01, sorry, but too much background noise.
No, I just
Yeah.
brought it up. I mean.
Yeah, and I'm just concerned that of the, like, I'd hate to do repeated searches because we've.
Right.
lowballed
I
it,
mean, I
but-
want to get it across the finish line. I think
Yeah, and I would have preferred to put a range in instead of a high, but,
Okay, no, that was a question.
I think my 2 cents would be the number may change between now and April when we sign the warrant, but
that's true.
But
I
we
don't
could
think
always
that we have
agree.
any indication at this point in time.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, we've left the option open.
Let's see what else. So reserve fund, I had said that I don't think the minus 824 should show up. I've thought about that. I agree with that just because I think usually the minus suggests that account was over budgeted and it doesn't need to be that high.
Because of that particular item, to me, it's the reserve fund, it's fundamentally different than the other lines, right? Because its only purpose is for transfers. But I think I know Melissa can chime in what she said to me, and I kind of track is that the accountant feels like it shows transparency because what that allows is that if we're transferring money from the reserve fund to, say, the planning board, which is what the 824 goes to, you have to track that it went from one place to another. And what I don't know is whether we need to track that on the warrant. I feel like we're still asking for 30,000. So I'm still feeling weird about it, but I get that if we don't, we're not tracking where that money went or what the planning board ended up actually using. And if we leave out the increase decrease part, then that makes it that would be the other thing from my perspective, is to kludge the increase decrease or just not show it, even if it's totaled. But if we change the increase decrease, because really it's a zero increase, we're asking for the same thing we asked for last year, right? The only thing that 824 is tracking is where the money ended up going, and presumably more of it's gonna go out, right? So that's gonna make that line look even odder.
But also between April, when we sign the warrant, and June, when the fiscal year is closed, there's a lot of little transfers, there's reserve fund transfers, and those aren't captured in the May town meeting budget. I think that the special town meeting transfers are kind of important to note, because like last year, when our fuel budget was 30,000 and we had to up it by 20 or 30,000, by the time we come to annual town meeting, we say, look, it was under budgeted last year. We're asking for 60 again, but we essentially got the 60 last year.
So could we solve it by saying that the only thing we're gonna show in the revisions column would actually be STMs?
Well,
And not
I could
transfers.
also see showing reserve fund transfers to accounts. That account is fundamentally different,
I
being
agree.
that it's budgeted to be transferred out of, not a decision we need to make tonight.
The one other thing I guess we could do, which I hadn't thought of, would be to just not show the, on the increase decrease line, what if we just blank that line out?
Entirely?
Just not the line, but that one box, if we
What,
do it on the warrant.
under the
Well, the one
increase-
box and we, I guess, artificially leave that 0%.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Because I think this is an artificial number, right? We're really asking for exactly the same thing we asked for last year,
Well, it's not about what we're asking for. Well,
The
oh, I
increase
see what you're,
decrease
yeah,
is-
yeah.
right? The increase decrease is.
I think even the revisions is a little bit, I don't think that we did it that way last year. I don't think it makes sense to do. I think it should just say 0.
Unless we put more money in at an STM.
Or somehow take money out of that account, an STM, and transfer it to another account, not use it for its purpose.
For its
I have
purpose.
one other thought regarding the reserve fund though, which is just that our health insurance is way up. I think Melissa can clarify exactly, but I believe we're budgeting for all the plans we're using plus an additional plan as a contingency. I wonder if one thing we might wanna do would be, and we could find other budgets that have a contingency built in, and instead of having 10,000 in this as a contingency and 10,000 in that as a contingency, up the reserve fund by 10,000 and get rid of the contingency in some of those other accounts, so we keep it in one central place, and we don't need to,
Do transfers between.
raise quite as much money.
Alright,
So the way that it's been generally explained to me before by the state is that some towns operate with kind of generous budgets for each line item, and then you can have a very low reserve fund because generally you don't overrun any account. And then the other general theory is to run very tight budgets on each line and a larger reserve fund,
right. Mhm.
which might make sense in our case. I feel like generally we operate with pretty generous line items and a smaller reserve fund.
Right.
And particularly just seeing the health insurance budget shoot up this year, it made me think, what if we could really just budget for the health insurance plans that we pay out and know that we put an extra 10,000 in the reserve fund to potentially cover that should an employee want to be on health insurance that's not currently on health insurance.
Yeah. What's the incremental cost, generally speaking, for, to go from, say, a single plan to a whole plan, or from no plan to a single plan?
Give me 1 second.
Because I'm not sure 10 grand covers worrisomely. Well, we just need to have a ballpark number that's more accurate, that's all.
The difference between a single plan to a family plan would be about $1,300
For the year,
per month,
per month.
Per month,
per month.
So it's like $15,000. And and one single plan?
A single plan costs the town about $600 a month.
Okay.
We have a cushion built in for a family plan, which is about $24,000.
Which I think, I agree with the cushion. I think it absolutely needs to be in there because at any given point, a single person could want a family plan, or we could, there could be employee turnover and now the new employee wants a plan. We need to be able to offer that. I just wonder if it's better stored in the reserve fund where it's more flexible. Maybe we could eliminate contingencies in other budgets.
I can
And-
see one potential problem with doing it, that just occurred to me. If something's in a general pool, you may draw from it, but if we're putting it in there for that purpose, unless we're right at the end of the fiscal year, you don't dare move that, because if someone does change their circumstance, you have to cover it. You could decrease the amount you need to cover based on how far you are through the year, right? But if it's sitting there and it's August, we don't usually, I mean, maybe it won't be a problem because the reserve fund often doesn't get drawn too much at the beginning of the year. We just had that one year where it was we had the July storm, so it was kind of exceptional year. But I'm just thinking about if you put it all in one place, how do you make sure that you remember to track? How
Yeah,
far are
it's like
you
you'd have
into
to
the year?
designate a certain amount because.
Well, you don't necessarily, and I think that's the way of doing it, is that each dollar isn't designated, but it allows you to potentially tax a little bit less, and you still cover your bases for the most part. And here's the thing is, we don't have, if every employee who's eligible for health insurance, wanted to go on it, either with the annual, option to go on it, or they changed from single plan to family plans, right now, we don't have that budgeted. It's not like we have the maximum health insurance budgeted. Right now, we just have budgeted what we currently have for employees using health insurance and one contingency. So there's always a possibility 3 single plans become family plans and one employee who wasn't taking it, there's turnover and the new employee wants it and you have to go to special town meeting, right? You can never fully avoid that unless you want to budget an extra $100,000 for the
No, I
maximum.
agree. I mean, I'm just saying, I understand the concept of not actually pegging the money for each thing. I'm just saying, the problem with doing the joint thing is that everybody who's thinking about how those monies need to be used needs to be aware that they have to track the possibility that that money is at least thoughtfully in there. We added that in there to cover this if it happened, and you can tick it down as the months go by to put it up to other things.
Yeah.
But if you, what would the temptation be there if there was an unexpected expense to go ahead and allocate the monies, and then all it takes is one baby, right? Like, you could go from, it wouldn't be from a single to a family, but it might be from a couple. I think there's also a couple designation. One person gets pregnant and you go from couple to family, boom, right? And that is a thing that happens to people, right? Like,
Especially
maybe not
young-
me personally, but people,
Younger workforce.
right? And I just feel like if it's in the health insurance thing, there's no way it's getting allocated to something else accidentally.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm having some second thoughts about having done away with stabilization, the individual stabilization funds. Because I think there was some value to people remembering what the money was being set aside for and having like a group memory of that and recognition of it. So that when it came time to buy the $1 million fire truck, we remembered if we put money aside for that specifically. I think it makes it, I guess I'm regretting it in retrospect.
Yeah, I don't really, frankly,
Okay.
just because we haven't used, it'd be one thing if we were using the stabilization for X and Y, but not Z. We haven't used it, period. It's
I'm
like
aware
we've
of that.
forgotten that it existed.
I know,
So-
but I feel like if it was pegged, if it
Yeah.
said fire truck stabilization or whatever you wanna call that, right? And we had been putting money towards it, when it came time to buy the fire truck, it'd be hard to say, no, don't use the fire truck stabilization fund, which was our savings fund, so we wouldn't have to pay $1,550,000 for a fire truck towards the fire truck. Hell no, let's leave it in stabilization. Whereas if it's just in the stabilization fund, feels dangerous to spend that money. What did we put it aside for? Was that earmarked for something? Like, I just think that the institutional memory gets lost. And so there's
There's
greater
turnover.
reticence to use it. But, whatever, that's Monday morning quarterbacking, but we're talking about the same concept here. And I'm just debating the wisdom of losing the knowledge of what it was for. Even though I told you.
Well, except
already
labor law
otherwise.
requires us to offer health insurance to our employees who are.
Which argues for leaving it in the line, so there's no way it could act.
No, but I mean, we can't, like, we have an employee who works 40 hours a week, they ask for health insurance, you know, or we have to give them health.
So you're saying
There's
we'd
no
have to go to a
discretion.
special town meeting if we hadn't?
I just mean there's no discretion.
Right, we
Period.
have to spend it.
Unless the
one way or
town
another.
wants serious lawsuits.
No,
Yeah.
I get your point. I get
So
your point.
there's no
I'm
like,
just trying to prevent us from having to go to special town meeting, which
yeah,
is added cost and added everything.
so anyways, that's just a thought as we move forward. Does anyone else
Where
have
are we in
something on the first page, I guess we'll generally go, like, in the 100s?
So IT expenses is.
Yeah, let me
supposedly
show on
down.
that, that's not in Melissa, here's an updated, what I gave you last week.
Also the audit is another thing.
Look at the revised number.
Thank you.
Well, we basically, after we had a call with Jock, on Friday, and we eliminated, basically, we would have it's a different, the server would stay here. And one thing I think that we came to the conclusion is that being we're taking the software, a lot of the software we used, and it's gonna be on the cloud, you know, the server here becomes less important.
Right.
So what we probably have to do is budget for another server in a couple of years, get some experience under, you know, working with the IT group, how much is being used. There's all kinds of things they can do to run. And then we could determine when and if we need them. We'll need a server eventually,
At some point.
at some point.
Put
But
off
we
getting
don't know the usage, so it's hard to estimate the price. It could be $5,000 to $15,000. But, you know, so the other part that's missing in that is the Microsoft licensing. He sent the email out late this afternoon what that would be. I haven't had a chance to put the numbers in there. So that would cover, you know, the kind of hardware, the security things that we would need. You'd get people up to Microsoft licensing requirements and would meet our needs. And the other thing we can do is, once we get it in, we can pursue grants if we wanted to go to
For the server.
the server or the other, if we wanted to set it up where nothing was in-house, there wasn't a server in-house.
So what, the Fortinet control and applicant server license, that's the server?
No, that Fortinet, that's controls the server that they would have. We're eliminating that part in our,
Because
because we're gonna do everything here.
here.
We originally were just gonna have a direct
Everything,
connection to there, and they would do it all. But when we got into the pricing of it, it, you know, it was just,
So, and this would include maintaining that server?
yeah,
Currently have.
good maintaining it. And there is a little bit of risk, the server could die. We don't have a budget number. You wouldn't spend money on to repair it because it's so old.
You either get a new one or go out.
Then you'd go out, so you would do it. Getting a new one would probably be the less expensive. But I think there would be money available for, you know, going after grants and things like that.
It does bring the bottom line down a lot.
That's substantial.
Did you guys have gotten?
We're coordinating another meeting. There's a little miscommunication on our side. So we're trying to get a meeting with another vendor
Okay.
this week.
To try to get comps.
Comps, yeah, to get comps.
Okay.
Rogers has spoken to the company. Did I get everything, Melissa? Mhm.
I don't have any remaining questions in the 100s for now.
Just scan. So that was the T. Nor I.
No, that's not-
Melissa, is it too preliminary to talk about potential changes in the fire line yet?
Yeah, when I talked to Sean today, he hadn't talked to anybody.
I thought it might be, okay.
So if there's nothing else, what, in the 100s, we'll go to 200.
Mhm.
The 200s is police, fire, building, trees.
So just so you guys know, Melissa and Sean and I had a conversation on Monday morning, just talking about, thinking about ways we might be able to stage in some of the changes, both for compensation and potentially for the lease, and just to give him the perspective of the overall budget and the pressure we're under, and like that we're all, I have the sense everybody's on board, that we recognize the need. We're just trying to figure out how to make it more politically palatable to everybody and get them some of the support they need, but not, cause, I would not like to see them turn down
Yeah,
at town meeting.
I
like-
think, the last meeting, we had a meeting with Kevin on Friday afternoon. And, judging from the conversation with Kevin, I think they understand.
Oh, they do, there's no question. So
Yeah.
really, it's a question of how to do that, how to
Mhm.
stage it, how to think about it so that they're feeling like, the guys are feeling like their needs are met and there's some progress made. And even if it's a memorandum of understanding, so there's institutional memory from one board to another or whatever.
There's one thing, I don't want to speak for the fire company, but, I had talked to Kevin in the last meeting about implementing some of the work that needed to be done on the building. And there's two really I don't know if urgent's the right word, but the flooring has the radiant heat in it and it's bad.
Yeah.
So so that's expensive. So, and the other is the apron coming out of the firehouse. Kevin used a word, I've never seen it, it buckled. So when you pull the fire truck out, you don't have much clearance between the doors. So those were something Kevin said, so we might have to give them in the warrant a little more money to get that done. There's $90,000 now. I asked Kevin, if these are gonna, you gotta start bringing numbers to the table because we're running out of time. That could be something might want, I'm not saying they will or they've agreed to it, that they might want to do in the first year. Okay, under the new lease, here's the warrant money, we're gonna do the floor and get the apron fixed. Because those are two pending issues that they've mentioned it a couple times in the 3 meetings we've had.
That sounds good. I mean, those sound like projects that need to be done.
Yeah, and they're doable.
What's the process for getting numbers on the town meeting warrant?
Well,
And is it something that,
I've asked Kevin, they know they need to answer questions like, what's the insurance for the building? Because they haven't done any due diligence on that in years. But we need to get these issues, I'll know more Friday, I can write you an email Friday afternoon.
well, I'm just curious, I mean, because we do different things, right? Sometimes we do, and
What-
Melissa is the procurement officer, sometimes we do sealed bids,
But
RFPs.
no, what we do is,
But to get a number on the warrant, what are we gonna do?
well, they need to give us some cost estimate and what's their priority. Part of the contract, and I sent some of the language that I want to use in the contract to the lawyer today. Chris said he would have a response back to me before we meet on Friday.
Friday.
So what they would say is in the first year of the lease, here's the warrant money, here are the payments you'll get. You'll complete and, we have to agree on the schedule. In this amount of time, there's transparency with the financial, here are the 2 projects you're gonna complete. Because there was 90,000 when, if we sign the lease, will be 90,000. We convert the 60,000 that's already there, the town, we could wait till May, because I don't think they'll be ready to start in May. And here's their money, it'd be, I'm just take a rough guess, $120,000. There's 2 projects, there's the apron and the floor. And then there's, what I also wrote in a paragraph is that that would be done, and this is how the money, they would understand that the money that they request for capital or major improvements to the building would be voted on by the town residents. those monies would be distributed in lease payments. That way we don't have to worry about living wage or prevailing wage or anything like that. They manage it on their end. And there's transparencies in the financials, because shit happens. They could be under budget, we take money and do something, sometimes you're over budget, and you ain't gonna have to use it. So that's how it would be handled, that's where we would do it, is in the lease agreement. And he has sent me a blank lease, so I got it printed out, but I sent him today, Chris, suggested paragraphs and asked to have it for Thursday afternoon, for Thursday. I told him
So it's
Thursday.
coming along.
Yeah, we're moving, but they need, they're like, the fire company's busy and, they got personalized firehouse and stuff like that in their jobs.
So
Did I answer your question,
I was
Justin?
just gonna ask.
Yeah,
Okay.
Alright,
any other questions in the 200s? We'll skip 300s, which is schooling, and we'll go to the 400s, highway, cemetery, transfer station.
so I'm gonna throw this out there because it came up in a meeting today and I'm not sure that it would amount to enough for us to wanna do it, but one option we could have to try to tweak down the transfer station costs would be to stop accepting bulky waste. And to just require construction waste be taken elsewhere.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how well that would go down. I think people might be upset, but
But,
it is an option that we
but
have.
what the other option is to charge them more.
Right,
You
that,
charge what more?
If you use the bulk, you get charged for it.
the problem is
Well-
that it's very hard to do it in a reasonable way. The reason for that is we pay by the ton and it's almost impossible to, estimate the weight of a load.
But do you
Without
know,
a
do
scale.
you know how much money we take when they charge? I haven't used it in a while.
I'm just curious, do you have the numbers on what fees we collected regarding bulky waste and?
What
money that we
I
spent?
can go look at fees. Do you have the fees? I'm looking up the tipping costs. So we pay $132 a ton for bulky waste.
That's for disposal, that's not transportation.
Correct. There's also transport, but the bottom line was that the total estimate on here is a little over 11 grand, for the 12-month period based on.
For bulk waste?
Just for bulk.
I-
What about hauling,
For what? What was your?
hauling,
Yeah.
hauling? I just wanna know, I don't think we're making money on it, I know we're not making money,
Well-
but how much money are we losing on taking?
I'm telling you right now, after having a dumpster at my house last year, it would have been cheap, it turned out cheaper to go up there with a pickup truck load than just having a dumpster.
I think it would be fine, I think a lot of towns don't accept bulky waste.
A lot of towns don't accept bulky
Yeah.
waste.
No, I don't know, I'm not sure, that thing fills up. It's just that if you have a lot of people with summer homes and they come up here and they wanna get away, get rid of stuff, it becomes a little problematic for that group. I can put it in my back of the truck and go on a Tuesday or something,
Right.
So
Drive up
what-
to Valley,
What,
or what was it?
I guess I just would be curious, are we losing $15,000 a year?
Do we know how much
100,000?
we're spending on that particular thing? Cause I was looking at the projections for next year, which was that,
I think the
11
question,
grand for tipping fees, but I don't know how many
But
what's the,
hauls that
You
was.
said 7,000 for hauling bulky, right?
No,
that sounds high,
it's 132 a ton to tip it.
and there's,
And so the estimate for next year was 11,121 for tipping fees for bulky.
What about
but
haul bulky?
Hauling is it's gonna be 385 per load,
and how many loads? do we do?
but that's the part I
It says
don't know.
36, you got it there.
What?
Haul bulky, 36.
Oh, right, there you go.
Total estimate for 12 months, 6,700 something.
We paid about 13,200 in 2023 for bulky, for hauling and tipping.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I can't tell you what we bring in because it's all lumped into one total.
But, and I'm not saying we have it for that year, for the whole year, but at one point Susan had separated out the receipts.
Yeah, I did.
So, and I would be curious, because the other thing we could do is we could say we're still accepting it and we it cost us $13,000 and we got 6,000 in, and so we're doubling the fees, and that's it.
I think and then if it doesn't get used, we do it next year, but I would not pull it out. I would double the fees before we get rid of it.
Yeah, double the fees,
Yeah.
or triple the fees.
Yeah. Whatever, I mean, it's sort of like this display advertising for these, the group there, when notices, public notices, and how much we're paying, we don't charge enough for that. The display ads in the paper.
Maybe this
Trying to
isn't,
find my total.
maybe this isn't a today, but
Yep,
but
Well, I
it's
think if you take a
it's
look at the
very
numbers,
curious thing.
I-
If for that matter, should we look at electronics, mattresses, and make sure that we're charging for each accordingly? I think that this was done.
the mattress.
It was done, but the thing is that it keeps changing, right? Like it was done for the previous contract, so that doesn't mean that under the current contract, we're paying the same, right?
Mhm.
So, and we might be, but I can't guarantee that. And it's true, I do have, I mean, these are old numbers, but they're still better than no numbers. So
And
I have
not
to go
that-
back and look at all
Not
this.
that this would, well, no, I mean, it would eventually show up, because when the accountant does the tax rate, they factor in estimated local receipts, which if we started, collecting double and local receipts from the transfer station would lower, it would have an impact on the taxes, not on this budget, but.
Right,
So that being said, I don't know if that's something you're going to take a deep dive into and say,
you want me to come up with a suggestion of what we could charge in order to be
Yeah.
at zero on it?
essentially. But I mean, I know one thing that will happen is you charge double and now a quarter of the people are now even using it, and so the numbers won't always end up lining up, but we can try.
Yeah, but
I think the
I
main
think
issue
you
we're
got-
gonna have is that it's hard to come up, like, it is hard to get a number for a volume when you're paying by weight. Right, you're
Right, I
gonna
agree.
be charging by a volume, but you're paying by weight.
It would scale, probably costs a lot of money,
Oh, yeah, for scale like that.
A
we
lot
do
of
it for
money.
everything.
like how much?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Not for scale. I'd have to see what's underneath the ground. There's a concrete pad under there, right? You have to put it in the concrete pad.
Could you
Oh,
just,
usually you put it, you weigh the truck before and after, right?
Or you could do that.
Or I
You
suppose you
could
could put it underneath the,
You could put it,
underneath the thing
we
and
used to have
just-
scales under everything.
but if you go to like Lennox or you go to Barbados, you drive on the scale, you dump, you drive
Yeah.
back on the scale.
Yeah, right.
Which I don't think that's really the business that the town wants to be in.
and I think
That's
it's a
another
really
thing that
big
needs
ticket
to-
item, those scales are super expensive.
Okay, forget I mentioned that.
No harm in asking.
No, it's no harm in asking at all. But I will take a dive into, an option would be to, one option is to stop taking budget waste, the other option is to charge more for it.
I think Frank and I, or the sense I get though is take it and jack the fees up, but the people
We
still
just have-
want it.
If you
I
look,
really appreciate that.
particularly in the state of Massachusetts, landfills are so problematic and so expensive now. They're not gonna get it cheaper by the time they spend time to drive to Pittsfield or wherever to dump it. They're still gonna be saving money here, even if we probably doubled it.
The minimum, keep this in mind, and you could ask actually, but I think last thing I knew, the minimum at Lennox Valley by weight for just like general construction is like $77. And the minimum at Barbados and Hillsdale is, I think, in the 20s or 30s. But then it is a
That's
per,
really low.
but it's a per pound, cause I think
Per pound,
Lennox,
okay.
well, Lennox Valley is like $77 for 1,000 pounds.
Okay,
But Barbados is like $23 for 250 pounds minimum. But we can think about what our
how we would do it.
other options are, cause we could start charging $100 for a pickup load, knowing that if someone wants to go save a few bucks and go dump for $77 at Lennox Valley, they're welcome to, but we're charging $100, but it's the convenience of being able to go right to your backyard.
So half pickup, big pickup. Three
Yeah, yeah.
rates. And no, it's a personal vehicle, it's not a business vehicle. We don't take, I think we already don't take from construction waste from professionals, as it were. Is that correct?
Yes,
I think so.
Yeah.
Theoretically, anyway.
Yes, theoretically.
So we will come up with some numbers for because there may also be a mattress fee increase.
Well, that's, yeah.
Because the-
States requiring mattresses be
Right, and the
recycled.
existing hauler is phasing it out, so we have to find some other folks, and it looks like it might be a lot more, which I'm not happy about.
Roger trucking won't haul the mattresses.
I have no idea. It's a special thing, they go to a different place.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
not going to MSW, they're going to mattress recyclers. And there's 2 new mattress recyclers, but they're both in the eastern part of the state, so.
There's more people there.
Well, it's a lot further to haul,
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Are there any other questions on the 400s?
Are we covering the fees for the mattress stuff?
We were, but I don't know if we will now.
Okay, well, I don't have any other questions tonight.
500s, human services. That would be your Board of Health and sanitary inspector, your council on aging, and outreach worker.
I didn't have anything in there, do
couple
you guys?
veterans.
Yeah, I don't have any.
600s, library, parks commission, community center.
So I did, talk to Mickey about why the library wages popped up that much, and, she's saying that the hourly increase was only 4%, but because of additional hours, she suggested that they were mostly from the town required trainings. I don't know them, I'm wondering if she may have also forgotten, but included in the calculation, but forgotten to mention any difference from the paying people for the time before and after their shift.
Yeah, well, she talked about that, remember, the last time
Yep.
when we, in the springtime.
Right, that was the last meeting, but it didn't get mentioned this time, but I remember it from that time. So I think that's why that's above the 4%.
Mhm. What's the,
Pardon?
Oh.
The beach.
oh, yeah, right, no, never mind.
Beach one? Yeah, okay. It does kill me that it costs $13,000 to mow the lawns and clean up the parks and beach, but that's what it costs, so.
I think too, there's more there than meets the eye, because, so it's Green Park, Bidwell Park, not as frequently, but happens. The town beach, the dam, I think they're paying for the dam. The Veterans Memorial Park on Beartown Mountain Road, I think is in that budget, rather than the cemetery budget. But I don't really know. But compare that number, which is what, just about $13,000 for those places, to the cemetery budget.
Where is this?
Cemetery maintenance and lawn care is $22,500 for the 5 cemeteries.
Wow.
Which I don't know, I mean, the biggest one being Quarter Share, I don't know, for what it's worth, there's those 2 numbers.
Wait, the one that's on the corner of
Blue
23.
Hill Road.
Blue Hill Road, yeah.
The parks handles, the town beach, Woodwell Park, Green Park, Parade Ground on Beartown Mountain, Brewer Park on Tyringham Road, and the community center.
So they're covering I thought the community center was doing the community center.
Sorry, the contract covers the community center.
But the community
Brian,
center budget comes out of its own budget.
Right.
It was a 3-year contract, so it was.
Gotcha.
So to mow all of the lawns in town, $22,500 for the cemeteries,
And 19, so it's like
19,
46 grand.
plus the community center.
That's a lot of mowing.
The cemetery, I believe, has 5 cemeteries.
Yeah. But a lot of them only get mowed once a month or once every couple weeks, because they're in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
And small.
They're kind of cool, actually. Those little ones. You and Marty, I know you like walking. You should, I don't know if you've ever been to them, but a couple of them, there's like 2 of them that are on Beartown Mountain. One that's right on the road and one that's back off the road on the north side. It's really cool back there. It's totally worth walking back
I'll
there.
have to try it
It's
out.
beautiful and it's just really beautiful.
So are there any other questions on the 600s?
No, I think I'm good.
The debt service we kind of talked about, but we will meet with
Yeah.
the treasurer and Unibank. And then we have our 900s, insurances, etc.
So, the problem I'm having is there's not a lot of fat to cut. I mean, I'm not finding a ton of things where I feel like, oh, that can go and that can go.
Well,
I mean, we just need more conversation with the fire group.
in the 100s, you go up a total of 47,000, of which the greatest chunk is the IT. And then also HR director / consulting is up 15,000, but it's really not up, we just transferred it.
From the special article.
Special articles last year. You're actually down 17,000 from the audit, you're down 14,000 from the assessor's expenses. You're up a few places in COLA, you're up on planning board expenses, down on town offices, and up for elections, you have a bunch of elections. So the ways to cut it there, frankly, would probably be try to really tighten down on the IT budget and potentially spend less money on human resources consulting. I mean, we could cut it anywhere, but I'm just
No, but
off the
you're,
top of my mind.
yeah, I get it.
There's not, that, I mean, those are the big ones there.
I'm just looking for it. And actually, looking at the updated one, is that, you're looking at the updated one? The subtotal I've got on the one Melissa sent out this afternoon is that it's down, the increase in the 100s is only 29.9, which is a lot less from the one I was looking at before.
Well, a good chunk of that
Is the IT.
Is
It's the IT,
It's
yeah.
not at all, it's not all.
Probably.
So that IT budget, if we can keep it from getting out of control.
The only thing, if I was gonna project, I'd say that the Microsoft licensing is gonna be about $3,000.
Which honestly, that's not bad for the number of licenses.
Computers, yeah. Roger sent an email out late this afternoon. I haven't read it. He's got some numbers and recommendations. But we'll keep working on it.
So
Yeah,
the HR and IT seem like big ones that could be potential.
and I mean, I think I'm hesitant to lower HR until after we've hired somebody.
Yeah.
But that's coming out of this year's budget, but I just wanna see what we end up with.
Yeah, for the first year. Don't be penny wise, pound foolish.
Exactly.
So in the 200s, I mean, I think it's mostly, so our new one says up 343,000. I think mostly is in the fire.
Yep.
I mean, tree warden expenses is something that I mentioned, but it seems like the consensus is tree work needs to be done.
I think it's pay now or pay more later. For the tree work.
Other than that, it's a lot, it's
Yeah.
driven by COLA in that section.
Mhm.
Education,
But coal is not 53%.
yeah.
Or maybe it is if it's deferred for 25 years.
Yeah,
I
Could
mean,
be, that's a good point.
you know, right?
The education, we won't
We can't,
discuss,
yeah.
but if we go to in the 400s, we're up 5% with 53,000, which isn't horrible.
Well, it's all coming from
Mostly
the transfer
transfer station.
station.
But also highway operations, but it's only up 4%, but that's, 9,000. I feel hesitant, obviously, we're not really gonna touch salaries or compensation, we're doing COLA, that's that. But I just look at a number like that and I wonder if there's wiggle room in the grand scheme. There's money there, highway capital is up only 3%, so like inflation, but just you wonder if there's wiggle room, or I do. And then the transfer station operations.
We've pretty much been we use that snow and ice money pretty regularly, and there's just no way to know what the weather's gonna bring, would that be correct?
True, but you can't cut that budget. If you cut it, you won't be able to raise it in future years.
You can't legally overspend it.
Gotcha. But what, you can't raise it in future years, is weird.
Like if we budgeted, if we dropped it from 150,000 to 140,000, right now we could legally overspend in a snow emergency. But next year, if we drop it to 140,000 from 150, we can't legally overspend.
Gotcha, okay.
That's how I understand it.
Not that we're ever wanting to overspend, but point taken.
500s are up 4%.
Which is probably mostly cold, I don't,
Well, veterans assessment is at
Veterans.
1,000. That budget and overall is really pretty small.
Yep.
The 600s are up 8%.
Yep.
16,000.
and yeah. No, there's a big part coming from library general.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
library.
but he moved the maintenance into general, didn't he?
Yeah,
So that's only a $6,000 increase.
but where was the maintenance coming from? The maintenance was still in the library budget, they just had it just went from one line to the other. So
Yeah,
that
he
wouldn't
moved it.
change the total for this, for 630, I see what you're saying.
Hmm.
Right, so the 15 got added on, so it's, right,
Yeah, we have two major switches, because we have the library maintenance, library general, and then
parts.
Parks Commission
Yeah.
to Parks Lawn Maintenance.
And we're doing, essentially, we're doing away with the two lines, right? The library maintenance and parks commission lines.
No,
Oh,
Parks
no,
Commission
Parks
is
Commission is not what
apparently
library
accounting
maintenance
error.
is, right, yeah.
But I also wonder, you sometimes wonder if we really need a separate lawn maintenance account. And it shouldn't all be lumped together, but if it keeps things clear, it keeps things clear. Like, I wonder.
I know, I wonder too, but I don't know that having fewer lines makes it better.
So community center operations is up 34%, which is, ends up being $5,000, but that does contribute
Yep,
quite a
it
bit.
does.
So that, maybe there's some wiggle room in some of those budgets, because that, it's up 8%.
Yeah, but I think with the lawn, I think there's, part of their problem was they're under budgeted for the, lawn in the community center.
Yeah.
And two is now
Wait,
they
was
have
there a
the,
theme about lawns?
yeah, then you have the full impact of that, plus what Brian has in the contract is increased the second year. So you're seeing the whole impact of the first year where it wasn't in the budget, and now you got it this year with an increase. I would have to look at the numbers, but I remember reading them about it. I don't know, we can take it back, go back and look at that, but
So then the 700s, we can't even really talk about. But the scary thing there is, we're down, 48,000 in payments, and yet the whole budget is still up as much as it's up.
Mhm.
And then in the miscellaneous expenses in the 900s,
I'm sorry, down in payments, what do you have? Oh, the
this budget has us making 48,000 less
yeah.
payments.
payments towards the loan.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but the
I lost
budget's-
where you were. Yeah, no, I get
budget's
that.
Still up, so that's
Right,
like
yeah, I know.
scary, right?
It's really scary,
And
it's
then-
really scary.
But then
And-
every time we get to a specific line, we need a little bit of momentum to say, well, we should really talk these people down.
Yeah, well, this is the one that's freaking me
Well, that's why,
out. I know,
I think the
Well,
the
lines,
total special article.
so I think the lines that I've mentioned, as scary as it would be to decrease any of them, maybe we just need to say, we need to.
Right, I mean, maybe we need to,
Because we're not gonna cut salaries, obviously, right?
We
We're not,
maybe we need to reach out.
Health insurance, there's not,
Right.
there's only certain categories.
So you can't, well, maybe we need to reach out to every department and say, hey, we're looking at massive budget increases and we're looking for
Well, I think what you-
anything you think you can cut, please do it.
Well, I
It's
think-
not your dream year, we're not cutting salaries, we're not cutting health benefits. If there's anything in that budget that you could do without, we're begging you to come forward with it. I mean, I don't like to sound like that, but I don't,
well, I think
I mean,
the 10 or 20 ones we just talked about are some of the biggest are some of the ones that would be even possible.
I'm sorry, the 10 or 20 ones, what do you mean?
The 10 or 20 that we just went through, like
Oh, right.
IT,
Right.
HR, highway operations.
Highway, you know, highway,
But highway, we'd have to ask.
yeah, highway, it's got the biggest budget, but I mean, a lot of it's labor, so you can't cut that.
No?
Well, yeah, I'm saying not labor, so put compensation off the table. Look at things like library general,
Mhm.
parks commission, highway capital, the
Highway operations,
non-compensation accounts.
Right, I agree.
And say, it's just, it's a tight year, we have to tighten up a little bit, and then the only,
Is there any?
only
there's
other thing in
nothing
the 900s would be, like I said, that you look at health insurance is up 36,000, which is almost all of in that subtotal is up 42,000,
Mhm.
almost all of it is health insurance.
Oh, yeah.
So that's partly why I was wondering, could we,
And that's just an estimate, because we don't actually know what the increase is. Could we what?
well, could we do what I said before and keep, and tighten up that to basically what we're currently using? in
You
terms
mean
of
leave out
plans.
the extra plan?
And then maybe add in 10,000 in the reserve fund, knowing that, we tighten up the health insurance budget. And then maybe tighten up a few other budgets, like highway capital, library general, and say, we know this might be a squeeze, but we're really trying to tighten down on things that aren't labor, because we're not touching labor. And we do have money, we're gonna put some extra money in the reserve fund, knowing that it might be a tight budget next year. It's just a thought, because this kind of seems like we can't bring it to town meeting like this.
No, it needs work.
I think the next question I have is are there any things on the special articles we can cut?
So the special articles really are not bad this year. I mean, there's a lot of ones that we had last year that we don't have this year. Southern Berkshire assessment is up.
And the culvert match is on there.
My biggest question is, I think it probably makes sense to buy I think it absolutely makes sense to buy the pickup truck without debt. I would even say we should probably buy the F-550 without debt, because we're gonna be done with the library in something like 7 years, depending on how we pay it off. The new fire truck, depending on when we order it and get it, we're probably gonna start paying in 3 or 4 years roughly. So there's gonna be a few years of overlap where we're paying two pretty large
With library and truck.
loans with the library and the truck. And so I think it might make a lot of sense to, during those 3 or 4 years, have a limited amount of other debts.
Do we wanna consider using stabilization
Yeah,
to pay for part of the
sure.
550?
yeah, or all of it.
What about the the Highway 90? Can that do any of the Route 23 culvert? Can we take some money out of that?
What options do we have to use for the culvert monies?
Chapter 90 is an option.
We need to take a hard look at that.
We just don't wanna cripple other.
Yeah.
I honestly don't foresee in any way, shape or form saying we have $360,000 this year for the culvert. And I don't really think it'd be wise to take that out in debt.
I don't want to take it.
Yeah, I think that would be
There's,
very good, or we could try to split it and take some out of stabilization, but we're certainly not gonna raise it with taxes.
So out of curiosity though, what, remind me what the timeline is that we're talking about with Courtney, because there's
For the
applying
culvert?
for the culvert, because we have to apply for the grant, but we have to have the money for the match when we do
Yeah,
that,
but I
at
don't
least
think-
in that FY.
but I think you can't apply for the grant. They're supposed to have the cost by June of this year. And then when you apply for the grants, wouldn't you? Do you allow you to start the permitting process, and you get the grants, if I remember it right?
The way that she explained it was, we don't have to have the money approved, but we can say we're going to town meeting for the money.
But I guess I'm asking, time-wise, is that we're going to town meeting for the money for the FY 25 budget, or we're going to town meeting for the money for the FY 26 budget?
No, it
I'm
was,
just
as
thinking
I,
about the clock ticking down of
Well, yeah, you
when the
know,
grant is due, when all these things happen, when is it really gonna be that we're needing to have the money?
well, as I understand it, and Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, she was saying we would put it on this May's town meeting warrant in a few months.
I had that sense too, but I wanted to double check because I didn't wanna have it wrong.
The other thing I guess you could do is, look, if you take out no other debt and you pay for everything out of stabilization or free cash, including the 550, the pickup truck,
And we're just doing the
and
fire
then
truck.
you could do the culvert with debt, and the other advantage of doing the culvert with debt is if you don't get it, you don't have to take out the debt. Whereas if we approve it from free cash or stabilization or both, and
We
then
set that money aside and then we
we
have
set
to
that
release
money
it.
aside.
well, and takes portion out of it out of chapter 90.
The other thing you
Well, how
could do
much
is,
money is in chapter 90?
You spent some of it this up on.
while she's looking it up, keep in mind, we don't have to do it all from one source.
Yeah,
we could
that's what
yeah, we could do-
it's gonna be a
We
recipe.
could raise an appropriate sum,
Go from
chapter
A.
90 sum, borrow some,
All right.
so that the total thing isn't coming all out of one pocket.
Sorry, my computer froze. 613,000.
And then we'd probably financially next year, how much are we averaging per year on that? About
That we
100?
get, but we got extra this year, but.
Yeah, we usually get about 190.
Yeah.
And what other projects does Jim have flagged for it?
He's got a few road projects, culverts.
Yeah.
Give me a second.
I don't wanna,
That's
I don't wanna-
written over here.
What's that?
what, to use in chapter 90 or to spread it out amongst the things of which?
To use some chapter 90 money on the culvert.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of what it's for, but I don't wanna derail a different project, one for the other, right, then we're choosing between what gets done, but
And they
may have to.
Which one, you know, you look at this number.
I know,
and it's just like,
believe me, I know.
If it was your house, you'd put it off.
If it was my truck, I'd put it off. You can see, you don't.
Look at your truck, is that what you're
Is
saying?
that your truck up there?
What?
It looked different.
It rained.
So you
It
get
rained.
water up to the floor. My truck's in the garage.
Hey, Ron, they tell me you gotta do this, you gotta do that, it's gonna be $2,000, I don't do it, it's fine. It's like, there's so many nonsense sensors in
What year is that?
2016.
Just getting there, but
Next year, I'll be able to get antique tags for my truck,
20 years.
25.
I mean, David's like Toyota's over 10 years old, it's
Mhm.
still going fine.
I tell you, till we.
We did, and he's like, you know, we had to put, I think, almost $3,000 into it this year
Mhm.
total, cause it was a bunch of stuff that like, the engine's gonna die if you don't.
Mhm.
But he's like, should we do it? I'm like, what's the cost of the new one, honey? And he's like, okay, I'm paying the $3,000. Because
No, that's
it's
it.
double what we paid for,
Yeah.
right? Double. For I don't know that we need the copper roll car, but that's not the point. I think we paid like 45 for it, we got over 90
For which?
for the Highlander.
Really?
Yeah.
I had a Highlander, that was a great car, 220,000 miles.
Yeah, I'm hoping we'll get that extra 80,000 miles out of it for it.
220, the only thing that ever went on it was the radio.
The other thing is just the Southern Berkshire appropriation still seems like it's the right choice,
For
but,
SBA.
yeah. But if they keep doing this every year, it may come to a point where we look at other options.
I agree, and the other thing that, one of the interesting conversational pieces with Sean the other day was that he said that his concern is about the level of reimbursement they're getting from insurance, because which town was it, Melissa, he said that was getting, I don't wanna get it wrong. He said the ambulance, the volunteer ambulance service had someone doing all the applications to the insurance company and following up, and they were getting like almost 2,000 per trip for virtually all of them. And they were getting like almost complete reimbursement. But SBA is not, nowhere close, and that's why they're falling so short. And I'm wondering if, like, it's one thing if you're a volunteer company and you've got someone who's willing to
Yeah, that should be.
spend hours like hounding the insurance company to pay up. But they have to, right? Because that's their budget.
If they're leaving that much money on the table, you could find someone to be a collector.
This is kind of my point, like,
Yeah.
but the question is, how do we, if that's what the shortfall is, or the source of most of it, what do we do? Like,
Yeah,
do we
but that's
say we
something that
wanna?
board should be telling them to do that.
Yeah, it should, but that's, remember, I wanted to see it on the board and they wouldn't give it to us, pardon?
Well, we should get in touch with members of the board.
Yeah, because they sent out the notice of all the calls between October and December, the fourth quarter. But I asked Melissa the other day, do they send out the calls where they don't respond because they're busy and we have to call somebody else?
So in the last quarter, it was 0,
It was 0?
yeah.
Okay.
I had that
If-
right, yes, Melissa? Do you remember that from the other day, the last quarter, the SBA thing, there were no calls they didn't respond to?
I actually didn't see that on there.
No, I didn't see it on there, that email that had the sheet were the calls.
He's on the board, I believe,
Right.
or he's very involved, I think he's on the board.
I probably met him
He
at one of those
came
meetings,
to,
but when I have
he
to meet
came to
like
me.
10 different people, I don't retain their
But he
names.
might be a really good point of contact
To just talk about.
to talk about
what's
these
going on with
things, and maybe we can
reimbursement.
get more answers and see what they're doing, what they might be doing, what they might not be doing, and
Because
maybe
it
we
seemed
give
like
them the
the-
money and we say, we'll give you the money, but you have to,
Increase your
if you're getting
reimbursement.
you're getting 75% reimbursement rate, we need you to get 85% reimbursement rate by next year.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're not, but set some kind of, we had a contract or something.
We do.
But we just finished
But
it.
but I also, didn't we just sign a new one? At the
Well, that was
70
just the
rate?
first one.
Oh,
that
the
we got
70
now.
rate. No, I thought the first one was last year.
Yeah. We haven't signed a new one, but part of that, I think it's a 1-year contract.
But it was, I don't think the reimbursement rate was in there, was it?
It was, but maybe it's
maybe we
something
need
we
to-
add.
yeah.
Maybe it's something we add. But talk to John and he might give you a good sense of what's going on.
And I can't blame, it's a hard thing to do, but it's mission critical to fund your department. Did you guys see the thing about North Adams?
Yeah, well, I saw that, I didn't read it where they made them
State
stop.
just pulled their license to
Yeah,
operate.
yeah.
Yeep.
Because of,
They felt it was unsafe, it was a little it was a little unclear in the article what the reasons for that were, whether it was vehicle maintenance or understaffing or poor staffing or what, but that was basically they got pulled because they didn't think it was safe. There doesn't seem to be a plan for what to do instead, which is a kind of critical hole, but.
alright, well, are there any other budget questions? Oh, I had one more.
Yeah.
Melissa, can chapter 90 be used for grader tires or no?
I'm not sure. I know it can be used on certain kinds of equipment. I'll look into that.
Good question.
It's like,
Not that we
I don't
necessarily
think-
should, but it'd be good to know.
no,
If
just
it-
gives us options.
Okay,
Okay,
if we're done with that, we're done with one item, and it's been 1 hour.
well,
We'll be
that
out
item
here
was
by
always
morning.
gonna be the tough one, although maybe this too.
Special town meeting warrant,
When do we have to finalize this one?
I think it's February 14th or something.
Yeah, the 13th.
13th, okay.
And that's that's a Tuesday?
It's a Tuesday, yep. And
And so-
really, the week before, you should be done with it so we can send it to council for review.
Right. So really, we need to finalize it by the 6th.
Well, yeah, I mean, depends.
So I did submit a short article on the transfer station issue to the news, for what it's worth. I can send you guys a, did I send you guys a copy?
No, you
I don't
didn't.
think I did, I'll send you guys a copy of it. I haven't gotten anything back from Steve with edits, but I can send you the version I sent.
I do have a question, because people have been coming up to me, and it was only recently brought to my attention. In the January news on page 8, there's a list of like service opportunities,
Yeah,
but people are getting the sense that all these positions are vacant. Which is
I
not
don't think I paid a lot
true.
of attention.
no,
That is weird.
People come up and.
This was not me, so.
Oh, I know, and I think it was well intentioned, but
I see the point.
it's it's not really explicit, but I've had people come up to me and say.
These are all things that you can do for the town, but it's not necessarily that they're all vacant, that was.
Yeah,
They
because,
listed all the options, but that aren't really existent options.
For
Gotcha.
elected,
Right.
for elected vacancies, very recently we had 0. I don't know if we have any elected vacancies right now.
Well, I'm assuming they're suggesting people consider running for them, rather than that they're appointed, right?
The select board 3, like we don't have 3. I don't know, I just,
Right. It was an odd.
and I had a couple people come up to me and say, oh, I saw all the open positions in town.
Oh,
I
God.
never said one of
And I thought, well,
Oh.
we have a couple that we need filled, but
You wanna be a fence viewer?
there's not all that many,
No, there really aren't.
so,
the silver defense coordinator, someone asked me about that position.
so yeah, I don't
Sounds
know
like
how,
something out of the 60s.
I don't know what happened, but I just
Doug,
didn't
you
know if anyone, I don't think it explicitly said these are vacant seats, but it was confusing.
So, are we gonna, who are we asking to look at their budgets? We're asking Jim to look at, highway operations, and we're asking community center to look at their operational budget. Was there a third?
Library,
Library?
No.
How about I just send the request to everybody so no one feels singled out?
Good
Not a
suggestion.
terrible idea.
yeah, it's tough because people put time and effort into their budget requests, and I think that they honestly
Yeah,
mean them.
yeah.
It's just tough because we gotta go to town meeting and people aren't thrilled with their tax bills now, and this is just like
I see one.
not, yeah, so it's almost like we're gonna have to maybe make cuts even if people, like, what would you cut if you had to cut something, even if you didn't wanna cut, is kind of the question. Not like what's easy to cut, but
Right. And you can just say that the operating budget's going up by nearly 10%, and we're all concerned, and any cuts you can make would be appreciated. So we don't get lynched at town meeting.
I don't have any questions on the special town meeting warrant right now. I would generally say that I would keep it shorter and not have the recall bylaw and I don't think we're getting to the general bylaws, and I don't think we're getting to the TA salary, the administrative assistant office staff increase, the fire department capital at this meeting. I think that those would be things for annual town meeting. So I would kind of keep it limited to what's on page 1 minus the general bylaws, because unless I can like really get my act together, which I would love to do, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
Going to do the, general bylaws.
Yeah.
How many hours of office assistant coverage is in the existing budget?
I think it was 9
I thought they-
9 a week,
plus 5 for select board secretary,
so really it's
14.
14,
That's what, I remember 14.
which is close to half-time, so.
Mhm.
I know you like keeping them separate, but I would just like to have a second person in the building.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You could name an office assistant, an administrative assistant,
Yeah.
select board
Secretary,
secretary.
yeah, the title matters relatively little to me as long as they're present and doing that work.
Yeah.
It might matter to them, but it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, and that's something that we could definitely know by annual town meeting, I just don't get the sense that
We're gonna know now.
we're gonna know it when we're signing the warrant in a few weeks.
But I do have this general sense that if we had 14 hours, that's a good foundation, and it's there now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, that's
Yeah.
currently in the warrant, so we wouldn't even have, for the ATM,
Yeah,
right?
no,
And we have it in the budget now, we could literally go out and hire it now, so that makes me feel better.
I had deja vu, cause the Board of Health minutes recently came out and it said submitted by Lori McCarthy. I said, oh, she's back.
No.
And then I realized they're just from a while
Old,
ago.
yeah, okay. So you're thinking, and we don't have the BB, you're thinking pull Article, Article XX, the recall bylaw.
Well, I'm thinking realistically, what we'll have would be the front page minus the general bylaws, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Unless anything else comes up between now and then.
Okay.
And I mean, what you end up with is, we have to call a special town meeting because of the transfer station and kind of because of the solar.
Wait, are we
And
not gonna
IT.
do this? Are we gonna wait?
I don't know, I'm not familiar with that.
What, the fire?
So,
Yeah.
You know, realistically,
It's
they're
gonna
not gonna have
happen
work to, you know, they,
before it's May anyway.
well, it'd be- if you put it in May, it'd be July would be before they could start to work.
Right.
But if you already have the warrant and the money there, then you can award them, saying the lease payment the first month, you get $50,000.
Point taken.
You know,
So
'cause the money-
ideally it would
the
be
money-
on there,
Yeah,
but we have to draft,
I'll
that
know-
means we need
I-
to draft language to put it on there in the next week.
well,
two
let me
weeks.
be gauged by the meeting on Friday.
Okay.
Cause if they're not ready,
They're not-
they're not gonna say, look, we can still do the contract and say you'll get this amount, cause we can't increase the rent until July anyway.
I'm gonna
Because,
make a suggestion though.
because
If-
we don't have it in the budget.
if we're clear on the concept that we wanna take those monies and do something with them, whether it's on the special town meeting warrant or the annual town meeting warrant, why don't we go ahead and try and draft the language that would be on whatever warrant? So that we have the language prepared when we do put it on the warrant, because that's unusual language, and I think I don't know if do we try and draft that? Do we ask the attorney to draft that? What do we do? Because there seems to be you seem to have some clarity on how.
You
those
have
monies
clarity,
will be.
we took money last year and took money from the shed and put it into free cash.
Right,
So,
took money from where?
the shed,
the
put
repair
the siding on the
highway.
I
shed.
thought they would put it in stabilization.
But maybe it went to stabilization, okay, so it went. So the town has to vote on that money because it was voted in.
Right,
We're gonna ask them to vote it into making it lease payments, as part of lease payments to the Monterey Fire Company.
okay,
So
so you have a clear idea of
I
how
have a
that would
clear
be drafted.
idea, and the lawyer asked me, he goes, tell me how you want this, give me your first, like wording, and I sent that to him today.
Okay,
So he's,
so you're on,
so I hope to know more, particularly by next week.
Okay.
Try to get it across the finish line.
I mean, it's almost to the point of, cause this is 2 months before annual town meeting. There's like 2 things that really are having us call this meeting, because other than that, those
IT
are,
and transfer.
Yeah, because other than that, reserve fund and then, I mean, internal transfers in May, but it's almost like you don't wanna cause the voter fatigue, cause you're 2 months before town meeting, and there's a lot of this is.
Are you saying you wanna pull it and do it all on the ATM?
Well, it's a question of can we logistically actually fund the transfer station, I think is the big question. You probably could, if you wanted to do reserve fund, internal transfers when those open up, you could probably get away with that
It's a
if
big
you really wanted to,
ticket though. What's
but
the
you
shortfall?
drain the reserve fund.
Around everything.
Yeah, and typically at the end of the year, you use a lot of the reserve fund, don't you?
It depends.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's basically why we gotta do it. But we're pretty darn close to not needing to do it. When I looked at the date, I said, it's 2 months before I go to that meeting.
True, but I think the shortfall's 37.7.
Yep.
It's a lot. I don't know if we've got it in there, it's just transfers. Because we can't just drain the entire reserve fund. Can we?
Well, but remember last year when we had that special town meeting and we took money out of all kinds of accounts that we realized had extra money? You could do that at the extra, what does it cost you? So you end up with less money in free cash. But this would take
I guess what I'm
money-
asking is,
Yeah.
to do that, you still have to have a special town meeting. I understood you to be saying, what if we skipped the special town meeting and tried to just go to ATM?
Well, because you do reserve fund and then you get to May, and
And
in
you
May
can
and
do
June you
line
do
transfers.
transfers.
But May,
Yeah, I see, we
June,
may
May,
be able to-
June, so that would be 2 of the 7 months remaining by the year.
It's maybe a little bit hairy, but people do get sick of the special town meetings.
I get it,
Especially in the middle of winter.
although I don't know, I'd argue that in the middle of winter, there's less to do.
The other
We typically have really good attendance.
Here's the other problem that I had, that Melissa, I never really got sorted with Eric Kinshirf. And I've just never really been clear on it, and it makes no sense to me. We vote on an article at special town meeting, and I've asked other people, like, I don't know, it's very unclear to me. We vote on an article at special town meeting, like, let's say we vote on this article at special town meeting to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of 40,000 or any other sum from free cash to the transfer station operations account. And then that $40,000, if we vote on March 2nd, we vote yes, that $40,000 is immediately available in the transfer station operations account. For some reason, if we put the same article on the annual town meeting warrant in May, and we voted on May 6th,
It's not about
to see if the
July.
town will vote to transfer the sum of 40,000 or any other sum from free cash to the transfer station operations account, it's apparently not available till July 1. That makes
That's
it doesn't make sense.
It does, because one's a transfer effective for FY '24, and the other one is a budget that's for FY '25, which doesn't start till July.
It doesn't say
Correct.
that in, it's the same warrant article.
So we
The
could
wording
do it on the annual town meeting. You would just have to specify that you want it to take place in the current fiscal year.
It doesn't make sense to me, because I don't.
Yeah, but you hear what she's saying?
Because
You
it
can
says
do
right
that.
here that it's for FY.
Yeah, but
But
she
that's
says
one
you can do-
article. The budget, the operating budget is an article on the annual town meeting warrant. And then the special articles fall after. Is there some disclaimer at the beginning of the town meeting warrant that says all these special articles are about the next fiscal year unless specified otherwise? It doesn't make sense to me. The
He's
money-
just saying, it's never said, it's just implied, but yeah.
Well, no, is it implied? I mean,
Well, I don't know, it's clear to me that for the operating budget, that's true. You're
Oh,
saying about the
operating
special
budget, I
articles.
agree.
Right.
Operating budget, I completely agree with you, Susan. I'm talking about you get into the special articles at annual town meeting, and it makes no sense to me why the same article, if you voted on it the day before or the day after, would be open up immediately, but for some reason, if you do it during the annual town meeting warrant, it doesn't open until July 1.
Although it does say FY on here too.
But not in the actual article as it's written and
Oh,
voted on
not
at
in the
town meeting.
article, just in the budget numbers. Point.
That's what's prepared, that's what's
Right,
presented
no,
to
no,
town
I
meeting,
see your
that's what's
point.
voted on. And
It's weird.
I think this is how, we're not unique, and maybe there's something I'm missing, but it doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, I suppose you could put a special article in there that's specifically worded
Yeah, it does.
And
To
we
be
have,
used in
we've
FY
done it,
24 or
right,
something, right?
Melissa, we've done it, we did it last year with the parks. I just don't see why you need to, it doesn't make any sense to me,
That's right.
doesn't make any sense.
But you know what? If that's what the accountant and the little counsel are saying, I'm not
Well,
inclined
we'll
to
see.
test it.
No, I don't know, I think it's,
Jailhouse lawyer.
I think it might partially be because that's what people do, but it doesn't,
But maybe we don't
Why?
have to do it. I don't know.
why? I'm missing something when I read the annual town meeting warrant that says like, this is not the same as all the other town meetings, because at this town meeting, free cash that you have and it's completely available will not open up to July 1 for no apparent reason.
So we get 2 months of being able to move things from one line to another, right? Internal transfers. So that's 20K approximately, I'm estimating.
Well, all
Because
to say,
if we're figuring,
I
yeah,
remember why I started on that tangent. So
Do we
at
need to have
annual
special
town
town meeting?
meeting, at
right,
annual town meeting, if we get the reserve fund to tide us over till May, at the annual town meeting, we vote free cash to the transfer station operations account effective
immediately.
immediately. So we really only need to get to May.
Which
Yeah,
is
but
what, this is what I was trying
Either
to
way,
figure
but
out.
in May, you can start transferring from one account.
Either way, but so I'm sitting here thinking, what would we need? So if we're estimating it's about 9,700, a little more, 90, I'm gonna say 10 grand a month, right? And we have 68 left and it's 7 more months, is that right? 68 left? No, I think 68 might be out of date. But at 10 grand a month, May and June would be 20 grand. If the shortfall is 40 grand, then we'd have to we need another 20 grand to get us from now to the end of April with the existing funds being short by 20. Do we have 20 in there? That would be to get us to May. Right?
According
That
to the
20.
budget, we've transferred, I don't know if that number's up to date, but 824 out of the 30,000. So we have a little bit over 29,000.
It'd be tight.
Yeah, but on the IT, we haven't talked, if we did
Ooh,
that, that
there
would
is
be
the IT
monthly
issue.
payment month. So
And-
you wouldn't, you're gonna be paying in June and you're gonna be paying in that, those are monthly fees, that $9,700, it's not like I'd have to.
But what month will that start?
Well, I have it starting in March, because we were gonna have a meeting in February.
Right.
'Cause-
But do we,
So
have we
we might have
selected a
to delay
company
it?
yet? though?
Well, I mean, this is what we have, we're gonna talk to the other company. There's not a lot of work, a lot of it is about support work and monitoring.
But the big question would be, can we delay the start of the contract to then? What will happen?
Well, then I could ask them, could you break it down into 3 payments, or whatever, March, April, May, June, so it'd be 4 payments.
Right, but
Well,
just
I
remember,
don't
we're not allowed to pay for services received this year, next year. It's not legal. If we're getting the services this
No,
year, we
but I
have to pay
think
for
the
it.
idea
But
would
then
be
you
to
get
go
the
in
transfer.
May. That being said, I'm not trying to make more of a mess, I'm just trying to make less of
You're
one.
raising the question of can we do it? So I was pursuing, that seems like a reasonable goal.
I still think it's
I'm just
possible.
questioning whether it's possible, that's all, but this is my process to try to figure out if it's, I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just trying to make sure we cover all the bases. So it seems like the 2 things that would be in question would be covering how long can we wait to get the IT services we need? And would we have the money to pay for them if we need them before July? And I have the sense that the answer to that is we do need them before July. Would that be correct, Melissa?
Yeah.
That would be correct, and you're also forgetting about the community center that's not gonna have enough in their budget.
Reserve fund, I mean, this is why most towns don't have a special town meeting every year, because there's the reserve fund and there's internal transfers.
I think the question I'm
And-
asking is, does even the 29K in the reserve fund, is it enough to cover $3,300 for the community center? What's the cost of the current interim cost of the IT?
Yeah, I wish you.
Well,
this is
but it's
what
really,
you're
we need to
talking
get to the first Saturday in May, and at the first Saturday in May, you make
Per
these
month,
same
not-
transfers
see,
out
this
of free
is your-
cash.
10,
about.
10 that's on here,
Well, yeah, but per month is 1,630,
1,600.
yeah.
But the first Saturday in May,
We
for the
have-
last 2 months of fiscal year, you can make all of these transfer.
So for the last 2 months, we could move money
You
around.
could put free cash, just the way we're gonna do it at special town meeting, but do it at annual town meeting.
Right.
It's just a thought. It would be really nice, I have to say, every year I've been on the board, we've called at least one, if not two special town meetings. We did the one because the school forced us to it. If we gotta do it, we have to do it, and I'm not gonna make us do, or I'm not gonna suggest that we do illegal things or completely drain our reserves just to try and do it. But I think it's potentially better, on the whole, to not call a special town meeting if we can avoid it. Also knowing that we can make these same transfers in May, as long as we can get to May.
Right, and I guess the only other question is, can the first 2 articles wait?
100%. Those wait every year.
Okay,
The pay a bill of a prior year, we always wait. And then Article 3 wouldn't be needed if we don't have a special town meeting, because we wouldn't be
right,
having an
yeah,
extra
clearly,
special town
we'd be
meeting.
saving $1,300.
So,
I would
Okay.
argue that those bills of a prior year are from last June. So you're making those people wait almost a year.
To get paid.
Granted, it was their
Well,
fault that they submitted them late.
it was, right? It was their fault. And if they had submitted them even by the school meeting, we could have done it then. It's just exclusively their fault, and I have no second thoughts about making them wait, based on how late we were told that we owe them money. It's not really fair to the 700 registered voters of the town to say, we're at a town meeting and we're expecting you to show up because a company that we contract with submitted a bill.
Right, but you're
5 months
also
late.
making an assumption that there's going to be monies left over to transfer internally in addition to the reserve account.
Yeah, I am, but
I think
not only until May, really, because I wouldn't rely on internal transfers. I would say, let's make these same free cash transfers, but at the annual town meeting. If that makes sense.
I
But
think it's a
it's
bad
just a
idea.
thought.
The intention was always to have another special town meeting because you weren't including items on the school one.
Well, the solar zoning thing was supposed to be on the school one, and it got
Pushed this.
messed up. And I think there was something to doing one in January that would have been, okay, you can get a jump starter, but now we're talking about meeting 2 months before annual town meeting. One of the
Well,
other things that,
I tried to get you guys to have it in January.
well, I just don't think, people do get fatigued from the special town meetings, and I think one of the things that happens in, other towns, and not everywhere, and I'm not saying it's always right, but is they use the reserve fund, they use internal transfers to get by, and you just save the hassle of a special town meeting that's potentially unnecessary, and if it's necessary, it's necessary, but.
I guess the only other question is like, how much longer do we end up with an even longer annual town meeting if we don't? That may not be the best reason to have it or not have it, but if the general bylaws had made it onto here, I would have been like, no, we need to do it.
Well,
But
yes,
if they're not gonna make it on here, I see the value in maybe not doing it, because the whole reason I wanted to do it separately from the ATM was to try to be able to have that conversation without it being a 2-day annual town meeting.
Yeah, it always turns out to be cold.
that was always the reason for me, and unfortunately, that's not across the finish line. I mean, the other option would be to have a special town meeting with the general bylaws in April, May, June, sometime.
I mean, there's actually, I happen to know for a fact that we've on several occasions had special town meetings on the same day as the annual town meeting. I am not recommending it. But I was shocked to find out it happened one time. They had 2 SDMs on the same day. Presumably somebody didn't get on the ATM warrant, so they had to.
Was it zoning?
I don't remember.
No, they used to do it that way because they didn't know that they could have the articles combined onto one town meeting warrant. So they used to have a special to deal with the current fiscal year things first, then they would close that and have the annual town meeting, which was to deal with the next fiscal year.
Anyway, and I was not recommending that, because if the whole point is to allow people not to be exhausted, so they can actually have a thoughtful conversation about something like a bylaw change, I don't know that you, like, putting it, just packing the whole day doesn't help you.
Well, anyways, in the same vein of not packing the day and fatigue, what if we're done discussing the draft warrant for tonight?
That works.
We can come back to it next week. The articles themselves are very simple. The
Yeah.
question of whether or not we wanna have one at all is more complicated.
And involves, I think, some very thoughtful actual calculations to see, is there enough in the reserve fund to risk drawing it to zero to make it
Well,
to May?
but the other question is, is there money in where we can transfer later?
But if we make it, we can't transfer until
Until-
May anyway,
Right,
right? So that part's moot. So the question is, can we make it from now to May? That, to me, that would be the operative thing. Because if we don't have the money to make it from now to May, then I think we have to.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I agree. Reserve fund was always set up to be, look, in lieu of special town meeting.
I get your point.
I think I may be leaning towards calling it, because that 40,000 figure is scary, as well as the 10,000 figure. I just throwing it out there.
I mean, I think for $50,000, we kinda maybe should. It's enough that it,
Let's plan on calling it, and like I said though, what I would suggest is the first page minus the general bylaws, and that's the warrant,
right,
which is 7 things. I think there are other items that definitely can go on an annual town meeting, but I don't think that they're ready to go, or warrant being on the special. Cause at the very least, if we're gonna have a special, we can keep it short and sweet. So that's what I would kind of suggest, is to do those 7 articles and plan on doing it, because it's a large amount of money and. Okay, so we'll move on. TA position was on here just in case we had to discuss anything, but I don't think that we do. We already finalized the profile at last meeting.
Have you received an edited copy?
No.
Nope.
I'll forward it when I do. Tree questions for town council.
did Kevin write you anything?
Kevin did. I guess I didn't forward it to you all.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting question about this tree that's on private property that is leaning and looks like it's going to fall into the road. Which John Fields arborist has also concluded the same, so that's pretty convincing. It's also pretty much in the riverbed, which I think potentially invites some oversight of the Concom. You've seen the tree?
No, I haven't.
where
You
is
seen the
it?
tree?
No, I haven't.
It's down, you take a left on River Road and you go down,
Is it by the swimming hole or somewhere else?
It's
it's right.
right when you take the left, it's right on your left, it's before you get to Gould Road.
Oh, okay.
I have a very horrible picture of it.
I've probably seen the tree, but wasn't cognizant of seeing the tree.
You can't really see much, but you can see.
Look, there's a leaning tree!
See how these trees are like straight?
Yep, and
That
that one's
one's
leaning,
not.
no, I get it, it
But
fell over and it's
the
leaning on another tree.
These, you can't see at all, is like in the river.
Okay,
These trees are on the other side of the river, the road's right here.
okay.
I think it's also kind of I talked to Kevin briefly before the meeting tonight, and I said, have you dealt with other trees on private property that are leaning and potentially will fall on public roads? And he said he has not. This is the first one.
That doesn't even look like it would hit the road if it fell.
You gotta go in there and not see a horrible picture.
Okay, I'll go look more carefully.
Picture doesn't do it justice.
I just think that it's kind of a complicated thing because, if we're expecting residents, to pay, and maybe that's one of the burdens of being a private property owner, but to pay thousands and thousands of dollars. to deal with a tree that looks like it might fall on a public way, we should at least know that it's legal, but also kind of be consistent. Maybe a couple of options would be, does the town take care of it? Does the town try to split the bill with the resident to make sure that now the tree won't fall on the road? And so it's favorable to the town in that way, and it's favorable to the homeowner because they only pay half of it. Maybe that's not something we don't wanna do, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, but
That's an
you
option.
just cut it off where the part that would fall on. The way I understand.
But then
the
go to
tree-
the Concom, because you're gonna make a blockage in the river.
Yeah,
Then there's other trees that fall over the river at various points, but you know the Concom.
yeah.
So we cannot be the only town that has ever dealt with this problem.
Mhm.
Who would know what other towns do? Is that a town council? Is it the tree warden talking
Well,
about
I
the
think
tree
our town
wardens?
council has a
Yeah.
lot of experience with small municipalities.
So how do we ask?
Well, we can just
How do we
ask,
phrase
Well, I
the
think
question?
Kevin was gonna draw.
yeah, Kevin's
Okay.
been in a little bit of communication, Kevin's been back and forth with the landowner. I just think that the thing that I would hope that we consider as we move forward is, we're setting a precedent, and what do we want it to be? Is it going to be, we go after the landowner with kind of lawyers and letters that say, if this tree falls, you're liable? And maybe that's the way we wanna go, because we want the owner to
I
take
guess
care
what
of it.
I was saying is, I'd like to know what other towns have successfully managed and what it's involved, right?
Mhm.
Like, I don't think anybody wants to get in a situation where we're like, you're gonna have to pay, we're taking you to court, right? Like,
Mhm.
and for all I know, that doesn't happen too often, and people are like, okay, if you pay half, I'll do it, or whatever. I don't know what's worked, and obviously, it all is gonna come down to individual landowners, right? Unless the town pays for it completely, and I could even foresee a situation where if the town was willing to do it, the homeowner would be mad because they're like, I want that tree to fall naturally. It'll be, the brush
Damned if-
will house
Damned if
native
you do,
animals
damned if you
and,
don't.
We'll
Right,
talk to
yeah.
the Concom.
Right.
So basically the question is, we're gonna move forward as long as everyone's in agreement with kind of asking town council, are there any other questions or, so I guess one question for town council is, what do other towns do?
what has worked
Mhm.
successfully for other towns? What approaches have other towns taken that have been successful, and what are the pros and cons? And maybe everybody does exactly the same thing, so that's a really simple answer, but I don't know the answer.
Yeah. My other question that I'm hoping to ask, as long as everyone's okay with it, is, there's been a little bit of confusion or misunderstanding about when National Grid or John Field comes through and cuts trees that are on the town right away and they drop them, or sometimes they cut trees that are on private property and they drop them. Are the abutters entitled to those logs? Because sometimes abutters have felt like, that tree was on my property, or now it's on my property, or it's near my property, and I thought I was gonna get those logs, and someone else came along and snatched them up. So I don't know if you all have any thoughts on that. I don't know what the law is.
I don't know what the law is, but
either.
if it's on their property, it's their log, I would think,
But
You
then
just-
sometimes John Field comes back and picks them up too.
Well, here's what I have to say about that.
Yeah,
If
but John,
we're
you would
changing-
think John would have something in his contracts that covers that.
Well, he
So-
does, he has a fee.
I know, but if he has a fee, but in his work, does that become, is he hauling that away?
I mean, here's the thing, are we paying a fee for him to haul it and then he's getting paid for the log?
Yeah,
Like, I don't know.
but,
And do we want that, or do we want that wood to be available to whoever?
yeah, but.
I'm asking the question on how they
A lot
answer,
of the trees that I've,
are
Yeah.
not very good for
well,
anything.
we've
yeah,
actually,
firewood.
the last one was that oak tree on the corner there, it was actually on Anna's property. She let us cut it down because we leaned towards our house. He had to pay to get rid of it, it was so infested with bugs.
Bugs, right.
He took it somewhere over in Lee to get rid of it. Yeah. And
I
some of the places aren't taking that. With the,
Infected,
the national board or whatever it is.
yeah.
Yeah, they're not taking it. It's hard, it's not as easy to get rid of it as you think.
So I'll work with Kevin and send those questions to town council. both about that tree that's fallen over the river and what happens when logs are on the roadside.
Right. I mean, I don't wanna be annoying and not have an opinion, but the truth is, I could see benefits to any of the options. I don't like to see the wood get wasted.
Monterey Schoolhouse. So Melissa's reported that Construct is not interested in the building. What are we gonna do?
I've never seen you so quiet. Auction it off.
It's like.
Do we just sell it, but is that, what happens when the new owner tears it down? Is there a way to sell it? You know, would have to keep up, just the town of care? I mean, I think it has some historic value to it. I hate to see it just bought and torn down, but.
I guess that I don't have emotional attachment to that particular building.
I don't even have emotional attachment.
I know,
don't
but
care.
from a historic
But it's
standpoint,
historic, it's like we got the Bidwell House Museum, there's a nonprofit, there's energy behind it, cause it's an old building that's relevant to the town's history. The schoolhouse could almost be the same way,
I guess.
but it doesn't have that energy behind it.
Yeah, the question is, would someone put that energy behind it?
And I think the answer is, if someone was gonna put it, they would put it.
Yeah,
I don't think there is that energy, and I love historic buildings, I spend a lot of time visiting historic buildings. And there are many very cool historic buildings, there's also some buildings that are only old.
So would you think about putting on the town meeting warrant to authorize the sale of it, which I believe would be the procedure?
I mean, I
Maybe
think there'll be a bunch of people that are angry at me, but yes, I would. Because I think that's actually
Well, I
in the
think
best interest of the town.
One
and-
way or another, we need to do something, because
Yeah.
this status quo is not working.
No, it isn't. And I think the property could be used for something, the building is degrading rapidly. It's a lot of money to change that situation. There isn't a clear vision of what to do with it. I mean, the only other thing I can conceive of doing it is making it a building that's not open to the public and turning it into a storage facility, but maintaining the outside of it. But I think it's gonna be more money than it's worth.
You know, when dealing with an old house, it's easier to tear it down and start over.
I know.
You know, you look out those walls and
There's a lot of questionable things in there.
you got a wildlife in there that I don't
And the remains of wildlife.
Alright, well, if that is the route that the board wants to proceed, then we can certainly make that happen.
I mean, and if people are against it, then let's let them put their money
I
where
mean, I
their mouth
had one person said, why don't we buy the old church? I'm like, what are we gonna do with it?
Oh, the town by the church?
Yeah. It's like,
Well, I think that they kind of could go hand in hand in a way, if someone might be interested in the church for kind of non-profit or community
Well,
organizing.
Yeah, but what, you know, I'm not sure what you would use it for, because, you know, you could have some musical events there or something like that. And you got the-
people have done that,
Yeah.
like, there's a big church in Great Barrington that was renovated for that purpose and houses a bunch of nonprofits, but it involves a ton of money, there's not any parking, and
That's the
it's a
problem.
very difficult site, and I'm not trying to be down, it's also right in the middle of the commercial area. I mean, I don't know, maybe someone wants to open an art gallery and we can make Monterey an art gallery destination. I'm not down on it, I don't think the town wants to become the owner.
Yeah.
I hope that someone preserves it in some desirable fashion, that would be great.
Mhm.
But can we afford to be the,
Like the landlord.
Yeah, no, I don't think the town should do it. So, is this a situation of going to town council for the process of selling the schoolhouse?
I think we should ask the question so we know the odds what we can do.
I can do that.
Yeah, I think you have to, it doesn't mean we're gonna sell it, but we need to know what our options are.
Right, and how we would go about it if we want to, if it got approved.
And the other thing, if we're doing that, we might also look at some of those other town properties that are kind of extraneous. That the town owns on
The
actually.
ones that nobody's gonna want because they're
Well,
not.
but do they butt up to someone's property or?
Yeah, in a lot of cases, they do, and so someone might be, the neighbor, the abutter might be interested.
Right.
In, or something like that, so we just have to follow it. I mean, if it weren't for all these laws and stuff, it's almost like you go to the few abutters right now and say, are you interested in making an offer? But I know that there are some laws,
Yeah, you can't.
that we gotta follow.
You gotta follow.
We might need to go to town meeting to authorize the sale of the properties, but this could be,
If there's
jumpstart.
one big one, then yeah, it could jumpstart it.
So executive session minutes, we have we're looking really good, as far as what's released and actually on the website, which is good.
I'm trying to.
There's only-
Where's the list? I think we have made that.
Yeah, I have a new one.
Okay.
Well, I have an updated one. The only remaining ones are, since I've been on the board, are 3 from fall of 2021 in October and November. 1 from June 22, which was about potential litigation against the town by town clerk, which is ongoing litigation, I would assume. Is really not meant for public release at this time until the litigation is over. August of 2022, which was strategy and preparation for negotiations with the town clerk, which I would also assume is still an ongoing matter.
Which one, August of 2023?
Yeah, and then May of 2023, which was attorney-client communication, developments and litigation against the town brought by the former town clerk. So those 3, I think, are pretty much ongoing. The real question is October and November of 2021, which, not to beat a dead horse, but we are compelled to do a periodic review of
What
executive
were the
session minutes.
topics?
Purpose 1, complaints, charges, discipline, dismissal of an employee or employees. We can certainly get you they have all approved versions, they're just not released to the public. But we are compelled to do a periodic review. So that would be a question of just getting you all the minutes. The only other thing that we could do on this while we're at it, just to be done for now, would be, look, a couple years look back. I know there was one other litigation that kind of came to a close since I'd been on the board. What we might have done if we were on our game then is just say, oh, that came to a close. Go back and find whatever executive sessions there may or may not have been, I'm not familiar, and just say we can release them. So maybe that's something I'll look into. I think I was hoping to be a little bit more prepared on this week, but it really comes down to just if the board wants to release those minutes from 2021, if it feels like they're no longer executive session material, which.
I would participate in the June 22 one, right? This is 24, so I was likely in 22 in May.
Yeah.
And
August 22, you were there for.
Did you send me,
23.
the other day when you sent out the executives, cause I don't think I have final copies, I mostly only have draft copies.
I can do that, yeah, I can send final
Yeah.
copies that are approved, to you all.
Cause I would agree, if they're about litigation with the clerk, it's probably
Yeah.
better to keep them until that litigation is
Yeah.
over.
I mean, that's
But
only
the
right.
fall ones, I wouldn't have been the fall 2020 ones, I wouldn't have been part of.
Yeah, but it doesn't raise decision for the board, so we
Oh,
could-
no, I don't
yeah.
mean, I just mean, I'm
have
not
to.
familiar with them, right.
And then that would be good, cause we have to do that.
The clerk had not yet sued us in June of 2022.
No,
We
but
were just
there was
concerned
a-
about it might happen.
Potential litigation. I
Right.
think we actually did get an attorney letter. Was
About
what,
potential litigation,
Yeah.
right.
so. certainly if it's about potential litigation and then there is litigation, I still think it falls under.
Yeah.
Is still still executive session material, but it's also somewhat of a judgment call, so if ever you feel like, oh, the June 2022 minutes of executive session are still in executive session, are still confidential, but I think they should be released. Anyone can say that.
Right.
So yeah, I'll send that to everyone. Melissa, are there any more town administrator items?
Yes. While you're sending questions to town council, can you ask her if it's a legal, requirement for the planning board to post legal notices in the paper for site reviews?
Yeah.
Because if it's not required, we can take off, I think it's 3,200 from the planning board budget request.
Yeah, gotcha.
I've also had 2 grant proposal requests from the fire department. One for AJ, I think, I can't remember what his last name is, to write another grant for an exhaust system in the garage. He's proposing to charge $1,000. One is for Keegan to write one for new portable radios, $275. I would have waited till next week, but this grant is due in 2 weeks, so I kind of need to know if you approve the requests.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
that's unanimous.
unanimous approval.
Thank you.
That's good news.
I know. People wanna write grants to raise us money. Yes, please.
Kind of, under unanticipated business, Tom Sawyer, in response to our joint meeting between the planning board and the select board, did reach out to BRPC like he said he would, and found out there's a request for technical assistance program, and he just wants us to sign off on that. At this point, there's no monetary component, and it's basically getting advice on how to proceed with housing.
Great, and that seems like a good idea.
Okay, so yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, that's good. Are we ready for minutes tonight, or no?
I didn't do the 118, and I only just got, I think, just sent out the 110.
Justin, I don't think I've gotten any changes from you.
Yeah, I didn't, so I wasn't at 110, I don't have the 111, and I didn't do I didn't do the 18th, I haven't
Okay.
gotten to it.
And 111, I haven't finished doing. I hope to have them to tomorrow.
So the only ones that I would know of that might be ready to do would be January 10th.
Yeah,
Which I didn't
January
have.
10th, and then I sent my 111 in, and you did your 111 already, so. she
No.
doesn't-
No, I only did the 110, because I
No,
don't
the
have
110 is the
111.
fire department, yeah, I did the 110, sent it to her today,
Okay,
so that she has our changes.
Well, we're not behind.
Right,
So
we're not-
we're good.
so we can do it next week.
okay,
We're not.
with both changes in
Yeah,
there, that'd be
that's
great.
fine.
Okay.
I actually did something.
I kind of assumed that would be the case, I just didn't know.
Yeah, no, sounds good.
Yeah, and I was gonna get to the 18th and I didn't, so, is there any other unanticipated business?
I don't have anything.
Comments and
Oh, I
questions?
do, one, I talked with Melissa the other day, and we talked about having her at the joint fire meetings with us, so.
Mhm.
If anybody, I don't have a problem with it.
No.
So, but
I
that-
think the more comprehensive the knowledge is and the
Yeah,
more people
you
listening,
guys
the better.
understand the conversation. It's been a great conversation, so, I mean, we'll get to the nitty gritty now.
Yeah.
But 3 o'clock, Melissa, unless Kevin changes it Friday.
Unfortunately, I can't do 3 o'clock on Friday.
Okay.
But the next one I will.
Okay.
Comments and questions from the public?
How would we know if the callers had questions if we muted them?
We wouldn't. That's a
Okay.
very unfortunate thing. That's why I'm hesitant to do it in the first place. You notice sometimes I let the feedback go for a little bit
I
longer
mean,
than I might.
you can open it up to see if they stop the feedback.
Yeah, I just think if you call and you have excessive feedback,
Right, then
you
you've
kind of
lost your
lost your
opportunity.
opportunity.
Right.
I mean, it's fine if there's occasional noise or it happens for a
Right,
few
no,
seconds.
but that was a lie, it was a radio
Half a
playing
minute,
in the
so I
background,
just- then I say sorry, but I gotta mute you, and then if anything, they can always stop calling and call back.
True.
And their privilege would be
What's his name?
reinstated.
I can't remember.
Jeff and Warren.
Okay. Alright.
Adjourn.
All right.
Uh, We'll vote on adjourning,
Yes,
Second,
second, yes.
yes.
and yes, so that's meeting adjourned at 7:55.
Look at that, under 2 hours. Thanks for figuring out how to get that down. The
I
IT.
tell you, the IT